Morning. So welcome to the 2025 UCLA Downtown Los Angeles Transportation Forum. I'm Adam Millard-Ball. I'm a professor of urban planning, and I direct the UCLA Institute of Transportation Studies. And it's really nice to have you all here today to think not just about how we can plan for transportation for mega events themselves, but how we can use it as a springboard to secure a better future for transportation in the region. So first of all, I would like to, oh, that's my greeting. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that UCLA is a land-grant institution, and that as such, we acknowledge and honor the sacrifice of the Gabrielino Tonga people as the traditional land caretakers of Tavanga, the land upon which the UCLA campus and indeed the California endowment here now stand. So today, this program is brought to you by the Institute of Transportation Studies, but I would also like to thank the generous sponsors who have also made this event possible. So Arup and LA Metro, AECOM and the UCLA Lewis Center for Regional Policy Studies, Caltrans, Cambridge Systematics, the Southern California Association of Governments, STV and WSP, the California Resources Board, Estelano Advisors, the UC Davis National Center for Sustainable Transportation, and then also Cisco, HDR, the UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation, and V&A. So why are we here? So we started to have these conversations back in October at the mountain at the UCLA Arrowhead Symposium. And we explored how Los Angeles' upcoming mega events can create these opportunities to have a legacy, not just for the games and the World Cup and other events themselves, but for not just for 2028, but for 2038, for 2048 and beyond. Unfortunately, our branding didn't include an Olympic-style torch, which was more appropriate back in October, but it certainly doesn't reflect the tragedies that happened here in the region in January. But the idea of this torch was to symbolize collective momentum towards this goal. And so this Arrowhead theme will continue throughout our sessions today. But in short, how can we balance the more kind of urgent, like day-to-day demands of getting people to and from the Olympic and Paralympic events and World Cup games with longer-term needs of the region? Again, this opportunity to build a legacy. What partnerships are necessary to do that? And what is the civic center capacity that's needed to advance these legacies for Los Angeles, whether it's small transit wins, whether it's sidewalk accessibility, whether it's parking policy. And so whether it's small or large, we hope that today sparks some fresh thinking and we can build connections that go beyond this room. So what does this mean specifically for today? Well, we'll start off with a panel on small wins. The power of transforming transit. And then I'm really pleased in the room to have Supervisor Janice Hahn, who is joining us together from the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. She is also chair of Metro's Board of Directors, so thank you, Supervisor Hahn. And we'll have a conversation about how this can be an opportunity. We have lunch for two ends, nourishment and networking. And then we'll move in the afternoon to think about curbing inaccessibility. So think about how these mega events can provide the impetus to fix LA streets and sidewalks. Which leads us into our last panel, because this was kind of a major issue where the late colleague, planning professor Donald Shoup, was trying to think of ways to improve sidewalks and fund those improvements. And in the last session, we'll focus more on his impact and legacy. And then we'll end with a reception out in the courtyard here. So with each panel, we're going to use Slido. for you to ask your questions and to share your comments. And so you can go to either slido.com or on your phone or on a computer, enter this event code, and you'll be able to ask a question. And if you're invited to pose your question, just stand up, raise your hand, tell us who you are, where you're from, the organization, and if you have the opportunity to ask that question. So those are the details here. So with that, before this, actually, let me go back. I'm pleased to turn it over to the person who is perhaps the torch personified, Alyssa Walker, who is a journalist here in Los Angeles, who has a well-known blog called Torched, and is joining us to recap some the lessons from the October Arrowhead Forum. So thank you so much, Alyssa Walker.
Right? Is it? Okay, good. We got it. Okay. Thank you. I hope to not be the torch personified. Many people have mentioned the placement on the one graphic looks, very ominous. We're all rethinking our use of flames in our branding at this moment. I am standing here as Juan Matute's deputy, the deputy director of UCLA Transportation Studies. I'm his deputy. After we were all convened in Arrowhead, Juan wrote this incredible report, which I hope you all read and shared. And then I read the report and I talked to many of you and I synthesized the report in a story that I wrote on Torched. And we tried to come up with, us people who were there, to come up with these 5 kind of content buckets, or I'm going to almost call them a list of demands that we came up with after being together in Arrowhead. And these are kind of these themes that are going to carry us through, I think, through today and ongoing. Hopefully these conversations continue. And if you remember too, something else we helped manifest at the end of the Arrowhead event, we had a slide that was, the question was posed to all of us, who can convene Los Angeles region, and it was the Dodgers, and then they won the World Series. So congratulate yourselves for accomplishing that. Number 1, I think we can all agree, top level demand, accessibility, full stop. This should be the overriding goal of everything that we do. This should be the frame through which we view everything else of the work that we're doing over the next few years here. That one's pretty simple. Second, a list of legacy improvements and/or a strategic plan that helps us understand how we get from here to there. If you are from Metro or the city of Long Beach or MetroLink, you have something like this that's public on a website that we can go see, and anyone can share it with their friends and say, this is what we're doing, this is how we get there. We need to see more of those things. Number 3, the importance of neighborhood and fan zones and cultural engagement and viewing parties and little pop-up parks or cyclovia, open street engagements, anything that brings the spirit of this togetherness to our neighborhoods, to our communities, and celebrates the diversity and importance of our neighborhoods. Third, this is something else we kind of helped manifest, because if you remember, there was all these conversations about the importance of a capital improvement plan, how we put money behind the investments we want to make. We came down from the mountain, and the next day, the mayor's office announced that they were going to be working on a CIP. So another round of applause. We did that. That was really good. And this is on its way. The groups are meeting right now to make this happen. You'll hear more about this a little bit later, but this is in motion. This is happening. And fifth, a really key, I think, takeaway that came away from all of our conversations in Arrowhead was the need to make sure that everyone benefits from these mega events coming to the region. And one of the key motions that was moving through council at the time was the Olympic and Paralympic wage. This was approved last week in council. So another thing that you really all did help do. It does require still some signatures and a second vote, but I think it's all good. I will be the highest minimum wage in the country, $30 an hour by 2028. So as we move through the day, keep these things in mind. And if you have any more ideas for additional demands, please bring them to me. I'll be sitting right here. And I first want to introduce our Jody. Is Jody a panelist? You're also a panelist. Jody. I want to introduce Jody Litbeck, who is a longtime executive officer in community relations at Metro. You might know her as the most hated woman in Beverly Hills, also Bel Air now apparently. She retired last year, although I'm not supposed to say retired. She's transitioned to another really exciting role as senior fellow at the UCLA Institute of Transportation Studies. I would like to welcome Jody Litbeck.
Thank you. And Dan, Seleta, if you're here, come on up. And just for the sake of drama, I have to do this. Those of you who were in Arrowhead know. This is mine. I'm really old. And I worked for the LAOC in 83, 84, and I earned this damn jacket and I'm going to wear it. Specifically wore my blue dress today. Who's my Slido person? Hi. So a couple things before we get, good morning. Hi. Couple things before we get started. Put your questions into Slido. Here's the thing about Slido. You can vote questions up or down, which means early questions get more votes. Just it's the nature of the beast. So Jacob, what I'll say to you, if there are later questions that you think are really pithy, call them out. Okay. And yes, the whole Beverly Hills thing and the Purple Line. So Lord knows, I love a big, sexy rail project. But we're not going to focus on that today. Because those are, you know, they're happening or they're not happening and they're in whatever schedule they're on. And as I've been telling people, almost since the Olympics were awarded to LA, if we haven't broken ground yet on your big sexy rail project, it's not going to be here by the time of opening ceremonies.
But we've broken ground on a lot of big sexy rail projects.
We totally have.
Okay.
We totally have. And we're going to wrap up one big one. Oh, okay. More better?
Yeah, I didn't want that to be on
More better.
purpose, Deborah. Thank you.
More better. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we rely on all of you. So Dan and Seleta have been colleagues, both in and out of Metro of mine for a very long time, and they're great to work with. I first knew them both. I think Dan was one of Mayor Garcetti's transportation deputies. I don't know if I knew you before that or not. And Seleta.
I didn't have the fortune.
And Seleta was general manager of LADOT. Dan has now moved over where he's working on the mega events for the city. I don't even know what the official thing is called. I can never keep it in my head. And Seleta came over to Metro and is now, I was at Metro a long time, so I still say us and we, and is now our chief innovation officer. Her arriving is not the reason that I left. I just want to be clear about that. But we agreed we were going to start with Dan, who's going to do some context setting, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So go for it. And while he's getting set up, I see Supervisor Hahn walking in, so we'll welcome her again now that she's in the room. Thank you for coming. Yeah, you. I don't know, is there, I don't think there's another one. Yes. All right, go for it.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great. All right. I'm very excited to be here this morning. You know, I participated in this as a student when I was at UCLA, and so the tables have turned. But I want to thank Juan, the ITS team here for hosting us, as well as Jody and Seleta. And I hope that I can tell you a little bit about where we're trying to take the transportation effort right now with the games, with the time that we have left. So, all right. So everybody knows LA 28 is coming. We saw this over the summer because Snoop Dogg and Tom Cruise told us. So if you haven't known by now, 2028 is going to be the Olympic and Paralympic Games in LA. It is, by some measures, the largest peacetime event in human history, as LA 28 claims. To give you a sense of that magnitude, you can soak in some of these numbers. We have almost 60 different sports across both Olympic and Paralympic Games, over 800 events, dozens of competition venues and so forth, 100,000 contractors and volunteers, 5 billion worldwide viewers, 90,000 jobs supported in the region, almost 20 billion in economic output, 700 million in state and local taxes, and 1.6 billion in federal taxes. So the point of this is not so much to inundate you with numbers, just to give you a sense of the magnitude. This is a really, really big deal. This is not like a scaled up special event. This is like 35 March Madness tournaments all happening simultaneously in the same place, with an arts festival happening on top of that, a bunch of heads of state coming in to visit the games, a bunch of corporate activations going on, along with all these national houses. It's going to be bonkers and a lot of fun. Now, to take advantage of this, in the Office of Major Events here in the city, we're organizing our legacy program around these 9 different areas, right? And we're going to focus in today on, I think, more the accessibility and the streets and transit one, our panel in particular on streets and transit. But you can see that there's both kind of infrastructural or hard legacy things that are generated out of this, like creating a sidewalk or pouring a new curb ramp, and also kind of softer, more intangible legacy benefits, such as creating economic opportunity, affording somebody the opportunity for a job or a small business the chance to grow. And these are not things in abstract, right? We know, because Paris 2024 gave us a really, really powerful example of how to do this well, how to leverage the fact that you have these major events coming to accelerate your policy goals, to get things done that you maybe wouldn't have otherwise had the urgency for, right? I like to tell the people who I'm working with, this is the best deadline we will have in our entire careers to get anything done, right? Now, focusing down on transportation specifically, if we rewind a few years to 2018, right after LA was awarded the 28 games, we set our minds to how can we accelerate our transportation goals. And what was generated out of that was this program that many of you are familiar with called 28 by 28. 28 by 28 was focused on the larger projects, the mega projects, right? For the most part, ones that were in Metro's Measure M and Measure R expenditure plans. The kind of bigger transformative projects that the agency was doing anyway. Now, you can see some of them here. This is just 6 of them that were on the original list. And you can see, maybe you might be asking yourself, like, how much are these sort of really related to the games or really related to Metro's core operations? And that would be a fair question. Now, my favorite kind of projects are the projects that are the subject of this panel, the small ball projects, right? These are projects like Washington Flower improvements. So if any of you have ever ridden the A line or the E line, you know what a pain in the tuchus going through the Washington Flower junction can be, right? It's flat double junction. It has 30 to 40 trains per hour at peak. And it is the bottleneck for almost the entire county-wide light rail system. It goes through this intersection, right? And in fact, Metro once reported to the board that because of the configuration of this and the fact that it was underbuilt for the frequency of trains that go through, it causes Metro to incur $30 million of incremental cost per year in schedule padding and other things related to rail operations, which seems like it should be a target for us to improve, right? If this is the countywide bottleneck, if it was underbuilt, if it wasn't built to handle the ridership and the train frequency after Expo 2 opened, something we should do about, right? The board gave direction in 2017, 2020, and 2022 to instruct Metro to improve this. But despite that, there hasn't been a whole lot of organizational momentum behind fixing this. And some of that is due to unsuccessful grant applications and other factors, right? So as we were getting closer to the games, we decided from the board policy area that we wanted to refocus the attention away from some of the larger 28 by 28 projects, which at that point, because they're so prominent in the expenditure plans, they're going to be okay. There is going to be the organizational momentum behind them. They're going to get done, right? I don't think anyone here has a lot of doubt that, for instance, the Purple Line extension will be done by 2028. Now, not to take that for granted, a lot of work is going into that, right? But that is a project that everybody knows is a big deal, right? What germinated from this idea was the mobility concept plan. And in 2020, my old boss, Mayor Garcetti, did a motion that instructed Metro to take a new look at what we could do for games-related transportation priorities and focus a little more on the small ball, focus a little more on the things that benefit the core riders, focus on the things that I know because, where's Evie? There you are. I know because Brian Taylor told me that it's more cost effective if you have $1 billion, you spread it around to a bunch of little projects, not invest in one large project. That was the mentality that I had in mind when we were going through this policy discussion. Now, from 2020 to 2022, there was a bunch of planning work that happened at Metro, a lot of strong leadership on Seleta and her team in doing this. And we have come up with a list that is blessed by the board, the prioritized MCP project list. That is a beautiful collection of small ball things that will benefit our core riders, invest in public space in the city and the region, and do all of these things that we are going to be proud of if we can get it done, right? We were very, very fortunate before the administration changed. We had a successful federal grant application for reconnecting communities. This includes 14 miles of bus priority lanes, 23 miles of bus corridor enhancements, 60 Metro bike share stations, 5 first last mile improvement projects, and so forth, right? There's even more things that are in there. This is a perfect kind of program that we should be focusing our attention on to leave a legacy for 2028. And this is possible because we gave ourselves this 2028 urgent deadline. But there are always things that stand in our way, right? And so 5 of the key challenges that we experience, first, government capacity, right? Many of you saw the city of LA has just gone through a budget process that was proposing a number of layoffs. That directly impacts our ability to get things done. Stakeholder consensus is another one. Maybe not everybody agrees that the small ball projects are the things that are most important. And how do we deal with that, right? Funding, of course. We can't do anything if we don't have the money for it. Business as usual is a big enemy of mine and Seleta's. This means that going through your standard process, your standard kind of bureaucratic sludge will not get you projects done in the next 3 years in time for 2028. And so we need to be innovative, we need to streamline, we need to exempt and all of that. And then father time is coming for us all. And in 2028, you know, 3 years might seem like a lot of time to many of us, but in municipal time, 3 years is like the blink of an eye. And so that's our greatest challenge. So thank you all very much. I hope this was informative and helped set the stage. Very happy to be here and talk to you all. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I meant to look this up before I got here today, and then the morning got away from me. Somebody in the room knows how many days we have till opening ceremony. Somebody always announces it at these events. Somebody look it up. They'll know. They'll know.
1360 maybe,
It's
approximately.
going to go quickly, people. And I love what Dan said. Do not let the term small ball, don't view it as a derogatory term. As much as I love those big sexy rail projects, I mean, give me a bus lane every day. I love it. I love it. But we're going to give Dan a chance to catch his breath, and I'm going to ask Seleta to talk a little bit, and this was a little bit what we talked about on our planning call the other day. What is it says here, what's the message you want to share about Los Angeles to Angelinos in the world from their transportation experience for the 28 games? What do we want people to see and hope and take away when it's all done?
Sure. And I think it's a great question. And I'm an Oakland A's fan. I don't think I'll ever be a Vegas A's fan. But you know, the 80s proved that small ball wins World Series, which was always Oakland's way of doing things because ownership was a little cheap. Anyway, my sports commentary aside, I'll just say that, you know, one of the most interesting things in observing the way that Paris took advantage of their moment was that, you know, I'd heard a lot about the fact that the games are not an economic development opportunity, right? That was some of the conversation at Arrowhead. And walking around some of the museums and the neighborhoods in Paris during August, you could see that when people come for the games, they're coming to see their event. They're coming to go, they want to be part of that Olympic, Paralympic magic. They want to go to the fan zones. They want to see some athletes. They want to get the pins. It's a whole culture. But what the games represent are an opportunity to send a postcard about what is great about your place to the rest of the world. And the bounce in terms of economic investment and people coming to visit happens afterwards. So City of Paris has said, yeah, our tourism numbers were down during the games. They were actually less than what we normally see. But by the end of the year, we had exceeded a normal year because everybody was so excited by what we platformed during the games, which in Paris is their architecture. Right? Straight up. It's the beauty of that city. It's the built environment. It's the culture. It's the culture of the past. And if you saw the opening ceremonies, those Frenchies definitely were making a claim about owning the culture of the future as well. The storytelling was completely unhinged in the best French way possible. And so the question for us, first and foremost, is what is our postcard about this place going to say? Because the other thing to remember is that a third of the people at those games were Parisian, another third were French, and the other third were from the rest of the world. So when we talk about, you know, welcoming the world to Southern California, we absolutely are, but these games are also about us. The people coming to these games are going to be Southern Californians. They're going to be from our state. They're going to be from the United States. And our opportunity is to show them how fantastic it could be to get around a city seamlessly without having to agonize about transportation. No matter what your age, no matter what your, hey, I didn't know that was an applause line. Oh, hey, Eli. Okay,
That was
got
Eli, everybody.
Thank you. No matter your age, your ability, where you come from, you know, transportation should not be the thing that gets between you and seeing your event, cheering on your country, or participating in your event. So first and foremost, we have to nail that customer journey from the point wherever anybody's coming from the point they leave to the point they get to a venue. It should be beautiful. It should be excellent. It should be delightful. It should be seamless. It should be generous. It should be hospitable. All of those things. Right? Then we also need to care greatly about how everybody who can't get to a game participates. So the fan zones and those neighborhood hubs take on a life of their own. And I would argue that what we find in Los Angeles that we want to platform, I mean, Tom Cruise and Snoop Dogg are great. Celebrity culture is what it is. but it's our diversity, it's our neighborhood, it's our people, it's our culture, it's the things that make Los Angeles. You're able to walk down a block in Los Angeles and see a million different cultures and see people getting together and being together in community in their neighborhoods. And so we have to figure out, how do we bring that into the customer journey that will be on that B-roll, that will make up that postcard that we want to send to the rest of the world? How do we activate those things with things that represent us? But we have to have a stage to do that on. So getting the infrastructure right, whether it's digital or physical, the human touch and the friendly face that you encounter, the ambassadors, the volunteers, all of those things need to be absolutely right. And they're going to take a collective effort to really nail.
Yes, 100%. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Seleta put it perfectly. I wouldn't dare say anything else.
Well, but I do want to say, it's so tempting to say, well, this is such a huge opportunity, 2028, it's our deadline. Let's go get the money. Let's go build the things all across the county. And this is not to say that there aren't things all across the county and the region that are critical that we have to continue to work on and march on. But our focus now really needs to be on that stage that we build, both in the neighborhoods at fan zones and on that journey that people take to get to their event, right? We have to now become more myopic and focused on those things, because they're going to be extremely challenging to get right. And they're going to take every single one of us, every single institution represented in this room, every single layer of government, including the federal government, and every single community. Right. And so how do we build that big tent and keep everybody in the boat between now and then? Because the snarking and the criticism and the constant, and here I'm not talking about healthy accountability and calls to action. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Daily Mail writing a slapdash story about how LA is not ready for the games, et cetera. That's going to keep happening and it's going to increase. And so it's more challenging than ever for us to be together and pushing ourselves to get to that goal.
How many of you are sick and tired of seeing news organizations that aren't from Southern California writing smack about us? I'm like sick of it. I'm so sick of it. And all of these things that we have to do, that the games give the focus for, are going to be here afterwards to make the experience better for Angelenos. To that end, I am going to throw it to you now, Dan.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the funding.
Yeah.
What is the current situation? What does it look like for various transit projects? And a little bit to you as well, Seleta. So when I talk about projects, it's not just the infrastructure projects. It is those sexy bus lanes and everything else. But a lot of the stuff that goes into the customer experience for getting around. But we'll start with you, Dan, and let Seleta catch your breath a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. So you can divide this up, I think, into two different sections, right? We have the funding for the legacy initiatives, like the Reconnecting Communities grant that we got from the Biden administration, or the local transportation funding that we have for the major projects. That's all, for the most part, secured. I wish that we had another cycle of federal funding to go after, but I'm not holding my breath that, there would be a lot of investment from the current administration in LA for legacy projects. We may have the ability to get some state money or put a few more millions of dollars in our local budget. I'm happy to say that in the city's budget that is going through right now, we have, I think, $6 million to do first last mile improvements around Sepulveda Basin, for example, right? And that's another great small ball project that's being delivered by our Bureau of Engineering. That is going to leave a legacy benefit that's, giving us the deadline to get this done, where otherwise it might be more challenging to deliver it in an accelerated timeframe. So that's the legacy projects. The other side of that is the operational needs that we have to do, right? The Games Enhanced Transit System, or GETS, the Mobility Hub Network, and the Games Route Network. All of these things are the operational keys to the experience that Seleta was talking about. And it was...
Can you explain what some of those things are? Because I don't know
Yeah,
that everyone
sure.
in the room knows that.
So,
roughly?
yeah, so these three things are they all go together, right? It's like two of them, whatever, three legs with the stool. You know, all know what I'm talking about. So the Games Enhanced Transit System, this is a network, this is going to be a system of right now about 2,700 extra buses. We're hoping to bring that down to make it cheaper. But essentially, it's like Metro doubling its operational footprint for the peak of the games in carrying all of the spectators and the workforce that we'll need to get to the competition and non-competition venues. You saw the numbers of the magnitude and like how many people will be using that. 15 million spectators, that translates, I think, to about 5 million individuals, right? Again, largest peacetime event in human history. So the bus system is going to be taking people from point to point. The bus system will travel on the game's route network, which will be a network of priority lanes, mostly on freeways and the state highway system. That will take people, for instance, you'll go from the Athletes Village onto the 405 and the 10 and to Expo Park, right? And then the third part of that is the mobility hubs, and that is the interface point or the transfer points, right? So let's say you have a friend who's in for the games in 28, they're staying in a hotel in Simi Valley. They might drive a rental car to Chatsworth Station where they can get, they'll access the mobility hub there. They can transfer to the G line or to Metrolink, take that where they need to go close to a games venue where there'll be another mobility hub at the transfer point there, and then they'll go to their final destination from that. It was assumed in LA 28's budget, for better or worse, that the resources for those three systems would largely come from the federal government. And we are still working to secure that money. And that's it.
Well, that's depressing. What do you want to talk about? Some of the other things that are-
Well, I think we've been steadily, I think we've gone after every single discretionary grant in the last 3 or 4 years for the games. We have not had, I was very grateful for the Reconnecting Communities money. I wish we had been more successful. We also received SMART grant money, which will help with integrated ticketing, which is sort of the digital side of things and that digital footprint of the games, which is really important. That was one of the things that I think we can improve upon from what Paris did. Is just making that clearer and also using technology to manage all of the things that are going to compete with the transit system. So looking for opportunities to create what I would call a games API in open source that any company operating a fleet of vehicles can interface with and know immediately what streets are open and closed, what security perimeters are on and off. It's something we built at the city of LA in order to manage scooters. But it was always built with autonomous fleets in mind. And so there's an opportunity there to see what we can do with that. But I'll also say, we've got we are very lucky in this region, and we have a lot of our own money that we could really consider repurposing for this next period of time. As an example, there are 2 rounds of open streets funding that Metro could put out between now and the games. And can we consider how to repurpose those to have a big cyclovia for the entirety of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, right? Those kinds of ideas to repurpose existing funds is something the board has directed and asked us to think about and come back with. But there are regions all around this county that also have funding that could be repurposed for additional bus-only lanes or bike lanes or pedestrian or mobility hubs, those kinds of things. That Metro is ready to offer technical assistance to build. So in terms of, I think a lot about the inequity in LA County between cities, which cities cities have the resources to go after federal grants and execute them, and which cities don't. And traditionally, Metro's posture was, we manage the money, we manage the transit system, but we don't actually build on other people's dirt in terms of, building bike lanes or building bus only lanes. The games have offered us an opportunity to potentially have a more expansive posture when it comes to offering real hard technical assistance to some of those smaller jurisdictions. So Reconnecting Communities is a great example. There's 11 partners that we have. And to each one of them, we've said, what do you need? Do you need help with community outreach? Do you need somebody to do your design? Do you need somebody to manage a construction project? We have environmentally cleared all of those projects, and we're the ones interfacing with the feds, which is a project in and of itself when you're touching federal dollars, right? So that kind of opportunity to work together differently as a region is one of the softer legacies of the games that I hope we are successful in, because I know there are a lot of sub-regions with projects that they want to get done, but because of resources or because of complexity, jurisdictional challenges, or just not enough time to do anything except for keep the streetlights running, those projects haven't gotten done. So are there opportunities to take advantage of a different kind of partnership between now and the games? Again, focusing first and foremost on that customer journey, but then potentially looking for repeating that model after the games are over so that we can get these Measure M dollars out into projects the way that everybody wants.
Thanks. So by the way, it just occurred to me because somebody was going to say it, so I'll be the first. While we're all focused on the games in 28, we have some other big events coming to Southern California before then. So, time is of the essence, and these are opportunities for us to build up. I know you talked about capacity, but build up our ability as a region to start doing these things. But you said the magic L word, legacy.
Was that the L word? Is that what that show was about the whole
Yes.
time?
Yes, absolutely.
So confused.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because all of these things that are good to do, they are good to do because they're good to do. They are not good to do just for the games. If we can get them sooner, great, and let's keep them all afterwards because they make mobility around Los Angeles that much better.
That's right.
Oh,
We don't intend to do anything purely for the games.
and then have it
right?
go away.
And have it go away. Yeah, there are things that we want to do that may benefit us during the games
Right.
that will leave a legacy, but that's where the investment, ought to be going.
So since I mentioned these other things that are coming, what are some of the opportunities that there'll be to try these things out, these transit first things? Will there be priority given to buses and other modes for some of those things? And what can we do what can all of us in this room do, and everybody who, you tell two people and that thing to help make it happen? So we'll start with you, but go to you next.
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to demonstrate confidence in the system and in our ability to pull these things off, which I have no doubt about, right? I think the one question, or the thing I've been saying to people is, it's not a question of whether or not we can pull this off. The question is, how much pain is it going to take? Is it going to be smooth, or is it going to be bumpy? And what are we going to leave behind, right? Starting, I think, with upcoming major things like the Club World Cup, which is happening in the Rose Bowl in a few weeks. This is not the World Cup. This is the Club Cup. A lot of people get confused. They're not the same thing. One is happening this year. The regular World Cup is next year, right? So supercharging our transit service to Rose Bowl and making sure that works well is a way to test for the football finals then being in the Rose Bowl during the games, right? Same when the World Cup comes to SoFi, and we have the U.S. Men's Opener in a little over a year. That's another opportunity, right? We already know that we can succeed in this. I think anybody who went to any of the Eras Tour Taylor Swift shows at SoFi, like myself, had a lot of fun taking Metro system to get there. It was great. I ran into I stepped off the bus and I ran into somebody from Metro taking photos, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you." Was proud of that. But not only that, we have the Super Bowl coming in 27. We have the NBA All-Star Game in 26. We have a March Madness regional final coming to LA in the meantime. I think altogether we have like almost 10 like major events coming. It's I don't think
Not
there's-
counting the concerts and stuff.
No, right, not counting the concerts. I don't think that there is a region anywhere in the nation that's going to face this kind of activity and have the opportunities that we have through it over the next several years.
Yeah, I think.
World Series, hopefully more World Series, yes.
Yes, for sure. Not versus the Oakland A's, though, I don't think. So anyway,
Sacramento.
sorry, I'm so
Sacramento.
salty.
Sacramento.
About them going to Vegas. I know that River Cat Stadium is very charming, I'll say.
I don't blame you.
I know. Anyway, I will say this, the World Cup is, however many events it is, 7 or 8 events over, relatively short period of time at the same venue, right? And kind of one a day. However, we know that FIFA is already soaking up a lot of the parking that people normally rely on for a whole bunch of stuff, right? VIPs, fan zone type stuff, media, other activations. So the World Cup is going to give us a good opportunity to stress test our approach to getting folks from our trunk line to SoFi. And that offers, I think, a lot of good opportunities to work collaboratively with the city of Inglewood and with the stadium folks. Metro is actually a partner in the World Cup, which means that we are working closely with that organization. And the reason we're doing that is, one, because we think it's great and we think it's going to be a great moment for transit and we want to really take advantage of it. But it's also because we are making a bet that we are going to show and prove what Metro is capable of doing, the value that we bring to the table to the IOC, to LA 28, and to the federal government to strengthen our case for investment in the things that we need for 28. And in the meantime, the World Cup's also a great opportunity to test our approach to fan zones. We should already know where the celebrations are going to break out spontaneously when various teams win. You don't have to be a soccer genius, football genius to figure that out. You just have to know your neighborhood and know your city and know your county. And so we should already be thinking about how can we anticipate some of those celebrations and support them and amplify them with temporary street furniture, with nimble, easy street closures that you can do pretty quickly and easily, so that we don't see some of the things that we sometimes see when celebrations happen spontaneously and get out of hand. And then it's a matter for law enforcement and not a matter for community, as it should be. So I think those are the two big opportunities for us. And we're working very closely with our colleagues at the county and have a lot of support from the Board of Supervisors, the Metro Board of Directors, and a lot of direction from those bodies to make sure that we do work closely together on those kinds of things.
So I'm going to throw it open to Slido in a moment. But before I do, I just want to ask a question of the room. Besides me, and I'm old, how many people were here in Southern California and conscious for the 84 games?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's more than I expected.
Yeah. But what I want you to know is, as compared to 41 years ago now, I was really young when I got this jacket. I was. LA has a much more robust transportation and transit infrastructure, and we have a much more robust sports infrastructure. Okay. There was the Rose Bowl, there was the Coliseum. There wasn't, I'm sorry, I still call it Staples Center. There wasn't that. We have this more robust system. So I want you to be conscious of that. I also want you to think about, it's such an amazing thing to have the games here. And this is your opportunity, not just to see the high profile events. Lord knows I love a track and field final and gymnastics, But to see sports you wouldn't see, I'm a big fencing fan. I raised a kid who was a fencer. Go and see these sports. You are seeing world-class athletes. So don't limit yourself to the stuff that's going to be hard to get tickets to. What?
Yeah, go to Paralympic events.
Yes.
Like, please go.
100%.
I know
They-
Candace is here, and I'm looking forward to hearing from her later. But when I was in Paris, wheelchair
These
tennis
athletes are
is one of the
amazing.
most like demanding athletic sports I have ever seen. Like, very impressive. Don't make sure that you go to Paralympic events.
I'm going to use a word that's probably not very professional in this setting, but all of these Olympics are just, they're so badass. Go see them. Go see them.
Except for canoeing and women's softball, which I'm very salty about as a 2 softball player household.
You have a lot of complaints.
I do. You don't know the half, Jody.
Do you know there's an EAP program at Metro? Do you need emotional counseling?
But I have these panels for that.
I understand. I understand.
Seleta-
Jacob,
Seleta is a very good and effective leader. I'll just point out the complaints, maybe coincidence or not, I'm not sure.
all right, we're going to throw it open to all of you. Jacob, where are we going here?
We're going over to Edith de Guzman for a question in honor of the anniversary of La Sombrita on shade.
Hi, everyone. I'm Edith.
You stand
I'm-
up, please.
Yes.
So
I'm with
everyone
the-
can
yes.
see you. Yes.
Hi, I'm with the Luskin Center for Innovation and the Urban Planning Department. And I'm working with USC on Shade LA, which is concerned with shade. So our question is, what do you see as the low hanging fruit and maybe not so low hanging fruit for providing shade to bus riders and those along transit routes? Thank you.
I think Metro just put together a heat subcommittee under the whole games mobility planning effort. But some of the things that immediately come to mind for me for planting a tree in Los Angeles is one of the most challenging things that anyone can do, unfortunately. And with the amount of time that we have left, I think it could be very challenging for us to plant a tree in a cost-effective way and have a useful canopy for it in turn to benefit people during the games, right? That doesn't mean we shouldn't be planting trees. I want to plant many, many trees, but the material benefit to the venue approaches and the first last mile may not be realized in time because of establishment periods, so forth. So some of the low-hanging fruit may be trying to invest more in our STAP program in the city for bus shelters and doing more there than we otherwise would in time for the games, or looking at when we're doing our venue approach planning, for instance, if people will be walking from 7th Metro to the convention center, can we put up temporary shade structures? Can we do other innovative things? In Paris, they also had, this is not shade, this is more heat, but they had water misters to keep people cool. It was very effective. And maybe those things don't have to be temporary, right? Maybe they could be permanent improvements.
Yeah, I'll say, again, I think it's a matter of focusing investments that might already happen between now and then on and stacking them on corridors that are going to benefit a lot of riders and also show people what an approach might be to system-wide. Metro doesn't control directly all of the bus stops. Those are usually owned by the whatever municipality the system passes through. However, we did establish a heat subcommittee, a work stream, because what Paris did was to actually model the walks that people were likely to make, and by time of day, what the temperature and where this was going to be in 2 years or 3 years, because now you have to forecast that, unfortunately, and looking at where the sun would be the hottest and then focusing all of their shade and heat interventions in those places where it was going to be the most intense. And so we've started that same work. And I'm hoping that we can do that same thing. And in the meantime, the mobility hubs themselves some of these mobility hubs are $20 million investments, either from reconnecting communities or hopefully from some of the local grant money that's available that's coming up. And those are opportunities too, to show what does a beautifully constructed, well-built, welcoming place look like that provides a lot of shade over, what is probably going to be asphalt, right? Where it's going to be that much hotter anyway. What can we do? Are there treatments we can make to the asphalt itself? And what can we do underground, overhead, to directly address heat? Because there's no question that's something that keeps me up at night is worrying about people waiting in long lines or waiting to get on these buses and having heat related events. And that is the absolute last thing that we would want to have happen here.
Yeah, I feel like when I was at Metro, I can't even tell you how many times I would explain there was always Metro should, and I would have to explain Metro does not own and operate the streets and the sidewalks. There are 88 cities in LA who own and operate those streets and sidewalks, and we need partnerships. So I know there are many people in this room who are part of other cities, Councilmember Fish. Sorry, called you out. And others, he's not the only one. And we just need to do that work. Okay. Jacob, who's next?
Combine two questions here. Yu Hong Wang asks, given the federal challenges, what are concrete and doable policy changes at the state, county, and city level that would help propel small projects forward? And David Fenn asks I don't know how many $1 million question. What happens if we don't get federal money?
That's a $3 billion question, not $1 million question. Okay, I'll start.
Just go home, never mind.
So the short answer is that for these construction projects, particularly the ones that we've gotten funded federally, and that I hope we're going to see more funding that we can shake loose locally to build, is that Metro actually, by state law, has the authority to construct things in the public right of way. And if we were able to self-permit our construction projects, and here I'm talking, I'm not just talking about the big rail projects, and those are complicated, and I know that's pun intended, a third rail, and I'm not necessarily talking about those, but I'm talking about the mobility hubs, the bus lanes, the signals. If Metro was able to design and construct those ourselves without necessarily needing to go through a local permitting process, jurisdiction by jurisdiction by jurisdiction, and having sat on both sides of that, I know exactly what I'm talking about. When I say how much time could be saved and how much more quickly we could see those projects get done. But that requires an acknowledgement for why those permitting structures exist, that there is a potentially historic lack of trust, and also real questions about who owns the liability for constructing things in the public right of way. And so Metro has to own those things. But if we are willing to come to the table in that way, we found some of the local agencies are also willing to empower Metro with that self-permitting authority to actually get some of these smaller projects built more quickly. The state, we're really lucky to have a lot of leadership in the state, Scott Wiener among many others, who have really created an easier path for sustainable transportation projects in terms of CEQA. So I can't sit up here and say that CEQA is the barrier anymore. It really isn't. And then as long as we're not using federal funding, NEPA doesn't come into play, and who knows what the fate of NEPA is under this administration anyway. So it's not so much those kinds of hurdles that are in the way. Now we're talking about, surgical and granular projects where, if we get into an arm wrestling match over a curb ramp, could delay a project for 6 months, 12 months, whatever, that we don't have. So looking for those kinds of opportunities really at the tactician level is, I think, where the biggest ROI lies.
And time is money when you get to construction. I cannot tell you how much I argued unsuccessfully in my time at Metro. Oh, let's just get out in the street with our orange cones and do the work. And nobody wanted to take it on. Beverly Hills. Did you want to say something about that?
No, Seleta is correct. You know, the permitting process in the city can be very painful at times, and you know there are reasons for that. But when you're trying to work quickly to get a project done with a lot of urgency, the system is not designed for that scenario. And Seleta is absolutely right. You know, or having business as usual, that is going to stand in our way. The question about what happens if the federal funding doesn't come? So we need to do everything we can to make sure that that federal funding arrives, right? The three systems, the GETS, the mobility hubs, and the GRN, are not only about mobility, right? If, for instance, we didn't have one of those, then like, what, like, is everybody going to drive? What is that going to do to the demands we have for like traffic control? There's a whole cascade of impacts that will come, right? Not least of all that the Daily Mail is going to write many stories about that, right?
There's
And
real questions about security, right?
that as
and whether or
well,
not athletes and officials will be able to make it to their events. And, you know, if we don't have the gets, or we're having overcrowding on Metro's platforms, if you know, Secret Service is having to screen and clear every single vehicle that needs to get inside and park at a venue, the games would really not, I don't think they would be functional. I think there's a point of breakdown. And our job is to impress that upon the organizing committee and the federal government, and to make our case clearly that transportation investment is safety and security investment. And it's also an investment in making sure that America's games are what we hope for them to be, because Salt Lake is coming right behind us with the Winter Games. And if LA fails, you know, there's a real question about whether or not the IOC would want to host more events in the United States. So it has to be a point of collective action for us to figure this out. And then ultimately, I will say this, that if we are unable to prove that we can successfully move spectators and workforce efficiently using our transit system, then I feel like there should be a commensurate consideration in, for example, the number of tickets that are sold to events, if we're not able to accommodate them safely and securely, and make sure that athletes and officials can make it to their events.
Seleta said two very important words that I want to highlight. The games are in Los Angeles, but these are America's games. These are America's games. And I hope the powers that be in Washington will hear that and hold on to that. Jacob, where are we going now?
We're going to Andres over here.
Hey, thank you so much. My name is Andres Carrasquillo. I'm with Southern California Association of Governments. And Seleta, you mentioned kind of a technology solution through kind of a games API. And I was curious kind of who would take the role in developing that API? And then for the entire panel, what are the types of data that would be important to make available and accessible?
Great question. So, you know, Metro has really taken the lead as a convener, even if we're not the executor of a particular work stream, and actually initiating it, right? And trying to pull people together, and then figuring out what resources we could bring to the table. So I would assume that if we were going to move in that direction, that Metro would take a similar role, right? Bring people together, articulate a vision and a scope, and then work closely with partners at different levels of government and in the private sector to figure out exactly what it would look like, as well as law enforcement. In Paris, it was law enforcement at the Unified Command Center that was sending out information on a day-to-day basis about what was closed and what was open, but it wasn't done necessarily in a very elegant, centralized, or technology forward sort of way, right? And that is what this is meant to shortcut, so that instead of sending out PDFs or making phone calls or sending out maps, there is a single source that that companies can integrate with and see immediately, oh, these streets are open and these streets are closed. So the vision would be that ultimately it gets integrated in that way. And the important pieces of data and information would be things like where are the security perimeters that people can't go in, which streets are being open and closed for road events, for practices, for the marathon, for example, and other road events. Which neighborhoods are being impacted on a day-to-day basis, right? It's really that ground truth about the operation of the games themselves that is first and foremost the most essential in terms of figuring out how to manage the digital public right of way, right? There's already a digital twin of Los Angeles that UPS, Amazon, FedEx, Walmart all own and operate to get their fleets around the region. But really, it's the public sector that owns ground truth, and it's really the public sector that should own that digital twin, and that should be the point of authority about where it's safe to be and not be. Right? We may want to pedestrianize streets. For example, if we have spontaneous fans, celebration breakout, that we can immediately take in that information and push it out to all transit fleets, all businesses that are Uber, Lyft, et cetera, to make it safer for everybody and to allow those celebrations to happen. And then it gives us kind of a template for what we might do after the games are over.
So one of the things that we heard from Paris when we were up at Arrowhead, by the way, if none of you have been to the 2.5-3 day conference at Arrowhead, you should all go, whatever the topic is. It's great. It's the best conference I go to every year. But taking it beyond the street level, one of the things that we learned that they also did in Paris is they understood what was happening as events let out, say, and if Station X was really crowded, they could send information directing people to go to Station Y. Or I know many of our stations don't have 2 entrances, but you could say, okay, everybody go out of this part of the station and everybody come in here. So we can take that to the transit level as well. Did you want to comment on this question?
No, I agree with that. I think that during games time, that kind of timely information is going to be critical. I think if I remember right, in Paris's operations center, the #1 call for service they had was trash related.
Yeah.
As you were both talking, I was reminded of this quote that I know from Dwight Eisenhower, which is that plans are useless, but planning is essential, right? Just to say that we know that like during games time, like we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to respond to things that were unexpected. We're going to have to deal with surprises and so forth. Setting up the infrastructure to deal with that and make sure we're able to respond is going to be
that was absolutely my experience in '84. That I do remember. I don't remember a lot, but I remember that. And what I will tell you is having dependable real-time information for riders, whether it's for a big event or every day. If we're going to continue to build a transit culture in Los Angeles, people have to be able to get information that they know they can count on. Jacob, I think we probably have time for maybe one more question. So
Great.
pick a good one.
We'll go over to Lyle Janicek.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lyle Janicek. I'm with the Southern California Association of Governments. Do you think there's an opportunity to activate our community spaces through neighborhood/fan zones?
Yes.
That lives beyond the games, and how do we do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is one thing that I want to steal all of Paris's ideas and make them better. They did this so well, right? So every arrondissement in Paris, their council districts, had a community like fan side activation zone, live site, whatever you want to call it, right? And it was just so beautiful to go and experience them. They had huge view screens, they had lots of seating, there was shade structures, people could go there was like youth sports opportunities, there was services there and programming. Some of them had food and water, and they function as these wonderful community gathering spaces. And it was the most effective way that I've seen about making sure that the games can be a celebration for the entire city, not merely for the people who can go to the venues or who can afford to get in to pay the €350 to get into Team USA House, right? So making sure that the games are being brought to the city. And we all know we need public space investment in Los Angeles, right? And I think I look to the model of Ciclovia. Like Ciclovia is a wonderful experience that many, many people were skeptical about before it happened. That's the kind of like model and thing we want to create. We want to create gathering spaces for people in the community to come and experience that with their neighbors, with their communities, where they can have local programming. It's going to be beautiful. And I think that if that's a success, it'll demonstrate that these are enduring investments that are worthwhile, just like Ciclovia did, right? How we do that is a question for another day,
I have ideas.
but Seleta has some ideas.
By the way, well, before she gets her other ideas, I goofed on the schedule. We actually do have more time for questions. Go for it.
Right. Okay, so when I was at the city of LA, we started this program called Play Streets, and we worked with communities to iterate and fabricate what would be the exact right kind of furniture / play structure / other things that you would need if you wanted to turn your street into a playground. And can we make them light enough so that a little kid can pick them up, but sturdy enough so that you'd be okay with your grandma sitting on them? And can we make sure that we provide everything that people need, including things like shade sails? And so we worked that. We got it to a point where we had it figured out, and we had basically a playground in a box that we could roll up to a Play Street location, unpack it, and that's really all you had to do before the kids in the neighborhood and their families would all come out, and they would all start doing their own thing and bringing pizzas and water coolers and whatever. And so I have one of my pet ideas in the back of my head. We all have our pet ideas about the games and what we would like to see. Mine is a proliferation or a scaling up of that same idea for spontaneous fan zones and celebration streets, and for more permanent fan zones to be able to make them available to the community to set up on their own on an as needed basis. So I think that adjacent to every single mobility hub that we build should be a fan zone. That's a no-brainer. And we should figure out how to do it with modular and creative kind of furniture that can then be owned by that community so that they can easily bust it out and have a fan zone in that location whenever or wherever. And then thinking even more long-term, every time we put up a shade sail, because that's all we got at the moment, we should be planting a shade tree so that in 5 or 10 years, it becomes more and more of a permanent part of the fabric of a neighborhood and community. But that takes a lot of work, right? So we have to develop those relationships. We have to figure out who can activate and manage those, right? We tried it with People Streets. I would say successful, but could use a little more work to make it even more durable. But those are the kinds of ideas and opportunities that I think exist. And I will just say there should definitely be a fan zone next to the water taxi stations that Supervisor Hahn,
Yes.
Director Hahn, our chair, has directed us to take a look at. And I couldn't let this panel go by without mentioning maritime transport, since, other folks are out there talking about aviation, and surface transportation is my love, but we'll spread into maritime as well. It's a yes and kind of approach.
We are absolutely multimodal here.
Right.
Is water a surface?
Yeah, totally.
It's a mode. We're multimodal.
Okay.
Okay. Before we go to the next question, just because of where this conversation went, I know Eli's in the room. I don't know if Hillary's still in the room. There we go. Somebody hand them a microphone, and can you talk about the festival trail here? Don't take like the whole rest of the time. One of you fight it out. Stand up, please. Eli Littman, Executive Director of Move LA and many other things, and he really likes ice cream, I learned the other day. No.
Hello?
There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. Sorry, I was trying to hide out because I'm just exhausted from
No,
our
too
conference
bad.
on Friday and
Too bad.
and
I
the
saw
rail to
you.
rail opening on Saturday. I love Seleta. We love this idea of the play struck in a box. We got to pull that out and pull it off the shelf. What it's going to take is what we're calling a P4, which is philanthropy and the philanthropic sector stepping up, because that really requires the need for, we need a new model of governance, right? We need a new model that we kind of talked about at the rail to rail groundbreaking, where the community is adopting these pieces of infrastructure and operating and maintaining it, because we can't rely on our strapped public agencies like the city of Los Angeles or other cities that are really struggling right now to keep these up. And so we really need that like P4 model. And so that's what we're proposing with the Festival Trail. You can check it out, festivaltrail.org, or come and visit us, is how do we operationalize this idea of fan zones where people bring out their coolers and their pizza and have a safe place where they can play and have shade and have water. It's accessible, and really creating a partnership between government and nonprofits and the philanthropy sector that's permanent and existing and long lasting, so that, yeah, we can have these benefits long after these games exist. So that's a concept. I don't really have a question. It was just,
No,
you invited me to comment. So
I wanted to give you
appreciate
an advertising
my
opportunity.
appreciation. Thank you very much.
All right. Next question, Jacob. Whoops, we can't hear you.
Ann Chang,
Where's Ann Chang? Other side of the room.
oh, way over there.
Go, Phoebe, go.
Sorry.
Phoebe's getting her steps in today.
Hello, I'm Ann Chang. I'm on the board of the Parking Reform Network. Lovely to be here. My question is, will there be an Olympic transit pass? And if so, how much?
It's something worth investigating. It would be called a games transportation pass. I'll say a lot of people have said like, oh, is the GRN something that we can make permanent?
Games Route
right?
Network.
The Games Route Network. And I think the caution that I would have is that the travel patterns people will be doing during the games are not like the typical travel patterns in the city. That system isn't designed to serve the like day-to-day needs, right? But when we're talking about things like how disruptive that like taking lanes from on the freeways and dedicating them to games purposes would be, we need the background system to function as well as it possibly can, right? That's one of the reasons we're doing investments in things like bus lanes, right? And that's kind of a supply side of it. The demand side, encouraging people not to take car trips, encouraging people to take transit. If there was a games pass that we could do for Angelenos that would encourage that during games time, that, could be very promising, right?
I'll see you and raise you. The thing that I'm thinking about is what I would call a games mobility pass, which would also give you access to bike share, scooters, whatever else we have going on that people could use to get around while they're here. In 1984, to ride on one of the buses to the venues cost $6. In
That was a lot of
1984
money.
money, which
That
is
was
like
a lot of money.
$18 to ride that system. And so, as we get closer and as we see sort of how has the federal funding played out, what do we need to bring to the table? What is it going to cost to provide the service? Those are all things that will be under consideration for how much something like that would cost. However, the other piece, which you saw on one of Dan's slides, is something called universal basic mobility, which includes consideration of what we're calling a mobility wallet. So Metro has been giving $150 a month to a couple thousand people around Los Angeles to use on any form of transportation other than your own personal car. So you can't use it for an oil change. But you can use, or to put gas in your car, but you can use it to get to, for anything else that many of us take for granted. And we also gave out smartphones with that. That is part of the game's transportation plan, specifically focused on people who live around venues who are going to be disproportionately impacted, many of whom those venues are already in communities where people struggle with transportation as part of their household budget. And that was the number one finding from phase 1 of the pilot, is that this provision lowers people's stress, improves their mental health, and also improves specifically for women and girls mobility and ability to make the kinds of trips that they have to make on a daily basis, to pick up medications, to pick kids up from school, so that they can then get to their second job even when their car breaks down. They can now call an Uber or Lyft, which we may take for granted, but is truly a luxury and needs to be part of the safety net. So I would say those are the two things that we're sort of batting around and thinking about. Paris did this thing where they told all the Parisians, y'all go get your transit pass now at the normal price, because we're going to raise it for the period of time that the games are happening. And so, you know, that the fares are really set and overseen by our board. And so that's not something that we would do casually, lightly, or unilaterally. But I think the idea of packaging things together in a mobility pass coupled with some real direct aid for folks who are going to be impacted during the games is kind of what is in my brain.
So I'll raise even more than that, but it's not games related. Seleta talked about what your pet projects or pet ideas. I have really weird fantasies.
Jody, this is a family show.
I know. For years I've said, I want a single app on my phone, and it can be getting the bus, getting a car share, getting a bike share, getting, you know, so I don't have to have a car. Like, okay, I need, you know, it's the weekend and I need to go to Home Depot to get some big stuff. So I'm going to go get something for 2 hours. I want a single app. Anyway, I told you I have very weird fantasies. We'll talk, Eli. Jacob, where are we going now?
All right, over to Ava Bromberg.
Up at the front here. Oh.
Hi there, Ava Bromberg, Creative Urban Solutions. We live in a city with great neighborhoods and tremendous design and production talent and love for this city. What are your ideas for harnessing and animating this talent? And who should convene and build the platform for that collaboration?
The Dodgers, obviously. That's what Alyssa said.
We actually just, there's something going before our board this week to hopefully approve a contract of companies that will help us run from here until 2028. And my direction to folks before the RFP went out, when I was still up on panels like this, is that those teams, I expected those teams to be packed full of exactly the kind of local talent that you're talking about. Companies, individuals with real, authentic, deep connections in LA County that can shortcut any relational baggage that Metro might bring to the table in order to do that kind of tent building and consensus building. So, you know, one of the first things on my mind, if we get that contract approved, is that we need to do some real activation and design thinking around these mobility hubs. Like Metro will do a good job of building the thing to be functional, but when we talk about having communities adopt projects, things last because they're loved, and they're loved because they're beautiful. So my eye is on how do we take this huge investment in the thing, which is absolutely the price of entry. We have to build the thing and make it into something that is a point of pride and connection. That's not a mobility hub, but that's a neighborhood hub and a community hub. And I'm looking very much forward to activating this temporary giant staff augmentation between now and then to do that. But I know that there were a lot of incredible companies and individuals that bid on that work that didn't get it. So I'm also thinking about how can I bring those folks in? How can I bring those ideas to the table? Because everybody was bidding on that project and participating in that because they feel exactly the way that we do about this region, that they love it, that they know it, that they want us to succeed. And that's the kind of energy that we're going to have to harness. And so it's front of mind. I don't have like a specific, like, here's actually how we're going to do it, but I already have those first 3 task orders in my brain that are all along that exact path.
Dan?
No, that was a great answer.
Before we go to what I think will now be the last question, I want to say, while I called out our Culver City representative here, I know we have, and I talked about all the 88 cities. I know we have Pico Rivera in the room. We have my hometown of West Hollywood in the room. If you are not where you live at night, but if you are somebody here from a city that is not the city of Los Angeles, can we just see some hands up so we know who's here? That's great. That's great. So if you are a representative of somebody who can help make things happen in places other than the incorporated city of Los Angeles, there's lots of energy in this room.
Yeah, I would just also say, don't wait for anybody to like tell you what to do, or
Oh,
don't
no.
wait for perfect
Just go.
information. Yeah, just start.
Just go.
Yeah,
Just,
don't
just,
don't
and
have
I will,
time.
I'll tell you, success breeds success. Jacob. Who?
Tanny Ling.
Over there.
Hi, I'm Tawny Ling from Stop the Gondola. My question was, you had mentioned 2,700 buses that would be needed for the Olympics. How many buses do we currently have? And how many will need to be commissioned and deployed? And then how would that fleet of buses be further integrated into the daily ongoing metro network?
Yeah, so the 2,700 buses are loaner buses. They're not probably going to be new metro assets.
Which we got in 84.
Yeah.
We got a whole bunch of new buses. In
Metro's current fleet for them to run their regular operations is about 2,400. The 2,700 is on top of that. I think we've secured a few commitments for a few hundred so far.
650.
Yeah, which is a good start. So yeah, without the extra resources to run additional service, you know, that system, unfortunately, those buses will go back to their owners at the end.
But I will say this, that my boss, CEO Stephanie Wiggins, has been very clear that we are only interested in loaner buses that are clean. So we're looking for CNG or battery electric, which is a big challenge because in the US, there's actually it shrinks the number of potential loaners who could offer us those kinds of vehicles. And because all those vehicles are manufactured and they're all special and they all come with their own quirks, we would also be bringing in the personnel from those home transit agencies to operate and repair the buses, which then creates a huge training opportunity for us. We also have to house all those folks and feed them while they're here. And that's why the cost of that system, temporary though it is large. But there is also some consideration that Metro would be expanding its own workforce by some small amount in order to absorb that. So we wouldn't necessarily integrate those buses back into our existing fleets afterwards. But I do think it'll be a magical period of time. And imagine a doubling of the current bus fleet and a doubling of the current transit network that we have. It's a huge opportunity to really show what LA County and the region could look like in the future.
And we don't just need a place to house all the people that will come with those buses. We need a place for those buses to go and get cleaned and get fueled and get repaired and be ready to go into service. So we did that. I know I was involved in it in 2000 when we brought in all the buses for the Democratic Convention. So something we're going to have to do. So it's a really exciting time for LA, and we're going to spend some more time talking about it today. Because we have lots of, as much as the challenges are here, these are great opportunities, and we're all going to dig in and do the work. We're going to go to a break, and we're going to come back at 11:15 to hear from Chair Han. But would you join me in thanking Dan and Seleta and all of you for a great conversation?